Hello everyone, it's SpawnPoiint and today we're unboxing and taking a first look at the new iPhone 14 Pro and 14 Pro Max. We've got the two new colours here, including the Space Black, which is my personal favourite, and the Deep Purple. I'll get these unboxed and then we'll take a look at the colours, design, cameras, and of course that new dynamic island. I'll then show you some of the new features along with the cases that I've picked up. Now, as I shoot all of the videos on my channel with an iPhone, I'm really excited to see what the new camera has to offer and how it will help my future videos. Well, the first thing you'll notice is Apple have actually changed it up this year and gone for white boxes for their Pro models instead of the usual black. And the image on the front is of the front of the phone this time, showing the notch at the top or the dynamic island. Inside the box we have the iPhone itself, which we will set up in a minute. Then there's the usual paperwork and stickers, and under that we've got a USB-C to lightning cable for charging it. And as we're used to now, there's no power brick or earphones in the box. Okay, so I've gone for the new Space Black for my Pro Max, and it's kind of a matte black rather than grey or graphite that we've seen before. But on first impressions, this looks really stealthy. It's a lot darker than I was expecting it to be. In fact, I definitely prefer this over my Graphite 13 Pro Max. But here they are together to give you an idea of just how dark it is compared to the graphite grey. Well, the back glass has that same frosted look again, and even the Apple logo in the middle is a lot darker. And it does a good job of hiding the camera bump as well, because that again is quite dark. Looking around at the sides, there's the same still band that matches nicely to that dark theme, but it's still mirror-like, so it's going to pick up those fingerprints. The buttons appear to be unchanged. You've got the silent and the volume buttons on one side, and then we've got the power button on the other. Now, you might have noticed I do have a SIM card tray on mine, but that's because I'm in the UK. Now, if you're in the US, this has actually been removed and replaced with an eSIM instead. And on the bottom, we still have a lightning port, so no USB-C on the Pro models again. Looking at the camera bump, we've got three lenses again, including the new and improved 48 megapixel main, a 12 megapixel ultra wide, and a 12 megapixel telephoto lens. But I will talk more about the cameras in a couple of minutes. And here's what the iPhone 14 Pro looks like in deep purple. Now, this one is actually for my wife, so I will not be using it at all. But I'm actually pleased that she chose this colour, as it means I can check it out today. So it was a lot darker than I was expecting, so it was more of a grey purple rather than a bright purple, and it could actually pass as being a dark blue or even a graphite in certain light. But when the light hits it from certain angles, you can clearly see that purple coming through. Now, this deep purple does look nice, and it will likely be the popular choice this year. But on first impressions, I think I prefer the Space Black, so I am happy with the choice that I made. But what do you think? Out of these two choices right now, would you go for the Space Black or the Deep Purple? Let's take a look at the screen on this. So the Pro Max comes with a 6.7 inch screen, while the Pro model comes with a 6.1 inch. But they both have the same OLED Super Retina XDR display and the same resolution. They both also have the ProMotion 120Hz refresh rate, HDR, and haptic touch. Now, there are three big changes that we've seen added to the iPhone 14 Pro screen, and that's the new notch or the dynamic island, the always-on display, and the increased brightness. Now, the always-on display basically means the screen will go into a kind of a reduced brightness low power mode, but it will still let you view the time and see your notifications. Whether this will impact the battery life, I guess only time will tell. As for the brightness level, well, this has actually been increased to 1600 nits in HDR, and for outdoor use, this has actually been increased to 2000 nits peak brightness. So that should make a huge difference while you're viewing it outside. Now, having seen all of the demos out there for Dynamic Island, I'm genuinely excited to see how this works. I've only had this for a few hours today, but it actually works really well. Apple have taken a pretty boring hardware feature, the pill at the top, and made something of it. So depending on what you're doing, whether you're listening to music or setting a timer, or even an incoming call, you can see the notch dynamically changing and adapting to it. At the moment, not all apps are actually optimized for this, but I guess just like with the iOS 16 widgets, more and more will add support over the coming weeks. But as this is so close to the camera, I can imagine you're going to pick up fingerprints or smudges over time, so you'll probably need to wipe that front-facing camera quite frequently. On first impressions, the notch does look smaller than the 13 Pro in terms of its width, but as it's further away from the edge of the phone, it definitely protrudes into the screen space more. Using it for watching movies or even gaming could be an issue, especially if you didn't like the notch before. Well, as for the cameras, we've actually had a nice bump in quality this year, which we should see an improvement in both photos and videos. And in fact, this is the thing I'm most excited about. So we've still got three lenses on the back, including the brand new 48 megapixel main lens. This is a 24mm f1.78 lens, and the focal length on this is perfect. As I take all of the photos on my Instagram with an iPhone, I can only hope the 48 megapixels is going to make a massive difference. Then there's the 12 megapixel ultra wide, which is a 13mm f2.8 f1.2 lens. This is great for getting those nice wide shots, and it's supposed to be 2 times better in lower light. And finally, the 12 megapixel telephoto lens. Now this year they've actually given us 2 focal lengths with this lens. There's a 2 times 48mm f1.78 and a 3 times 77mm f2.8. It now means in the camera app we can actually swap between 0.5, 1, 2 and 3 to get the shot that we need. Of course with number 2 being the new one. I won't have any time today to go over them all, but there's obviously the normal modes you would expect to see in the camera app, and that includes the portrait, panoramic and macro as well. All of these look great, but I will leave that for my full review. Now the video capability on this has also been improved, which is awesome to see. So we still have 4K video at either 24, 25, 30 or 60 frames per second. And we also have 1080p and 720p. Now I've only used this for an hour today, but from what I can see so far, the video quality looks really good. It's hard to say if this is loads better than the 13 Pro Max, but I will definitely need to do some more testing. The cinematic mode has been improved from 1080p to 4K 30, so there's now even more of a reason to shoot with that mode. Then we have all of the normal modes like HDR, ProRes, slow-mo and time-lapse. But another big one for me is the new action mode, and this essentially is an improved stabilization mode for sport or action shots. Now this is actually capped at 2.8K and 60 frames per second, so you're not going to get that full 4K quality, although it is still pretty good. Now this could potentially replace the need to use a gimbal, although it definitely crops the shot quite tight, so that's something to bear in mind. And a few other specs I wanted to mention about the iPhone 14 Pro. Well, it's now got an A16 chip up from last year's A15, a front-facing 12 megapixel camera with autofocus, and 1 extra hour of battery, so that's now 29 hours versus last year's 28. And here are a few cases I've picked up for the iPhone 14 Pros. I've got 2 official Apple leather cases here, so I've got the Midnight for the Pro Max and the Ink Color for the 14 Pro. And then I've got a bunch of other cases that Spigen very kindly sent out. So I've got a slim one here, which is a really low profile. Then there are some armored cases for that extra protection, and even this transparent one, so loads of cases here to choose from. And finally, which is something I always add, is a screen protector. Now I know these screens are supposed to withhold scratches and drops, but I'm not taking any chances. So I'm using the Spigen all screen protector. You just remove the film, line it up and slide your finger from top to bottom, leave it on for a minute and that's it, it's done. Okay, so as for the prices, well, there are 4 color choices, 4 storage options, and 2 screen sizes to choose from. I've gone for the 1TB Pro Max, which is an eye-watering £1,749, or $1,599. Now, this really does seem overkill for a phone, but as I said, I do use this for everything that I create. Then the Pro model I have here, well, I got that in 256GB, and it comes in at £1,209 or $1,099. Like for like, the larger Pro Max is £100 or $100 over the normal Pro. But here are all of the prices for both options and sizes to give you an idea. So my first impressions of the iPhone 14 Pro Max, well, I like it. I think it's a worthy upgrade. The slightly longer battery, the awesome dynamic island, the always-on display, and of course those improved cameras. That for me is the #1 reason. But over the coming weeks, I will do a comparison of the 14 Pro against the 13 Pro and whether it's really worth upgrading. I will then do a full review of the iPhone 14 Pro Max after I've used it for a few more weeks. But any questions you have about either of these phones, please let me know. Now drop a 14 Pro in the comments and I will give you a thumbs up for staying right till the end. And if you did enjoy today's video, check out my YouTube setup video next, as that covers how I film every video on my channel with an iPhone. Thanks for watching, please like, sub and follow me on Instagram and Twitter. Until next time.